It's not your fault. Those are all driven by your subconscious pain that, again, I wasn't, for 47 years, I wasn't aware of. I thought everything was great. But if you look at why are our prisons full? Why is there a war in Ukraine going on? Why is the obesity rate so high, the divorce rate? It all comes back to the same thing. If you have a problem in life, it has to do with your thoughts, and your thoughts are only flawed. It's not your fault. Your brain's doing its job. They're only flawed by the childhood program that you received. So there's a better way. You don't have to suffer.
So I'm excited today because I have with me Brad Chandler. Brad is a happiness coach based in the Washington, D.C. area. Now, during his efforts to help his son overcome extreme anxiety, he found that he himself had unresolved trauma from his childhood. And that unresolved trauma caused his subconscious mind to rule his life by a set of untruths, mainly that he was unworthy, causing a lack of self-love, a lack of self-compassion. And those untruths dominated his life, costing him 2 marriages, $9 million in business mistakes. He was using alcohol and marijuana to escape, amongst many other negative things. So through a transformative exercise and ongoing meditation and neural reprogramming, he was able to find self-love and compassion. So he no longer allows these untruths to affect his life. He was literally and figuratively born again. He has found true freedom. So welcome, Brad. And I'm really looking forward today for your story. I want you to tell us how you found this freedom, because I know from working with clients myself as a coach that what people really want is peace of mind and happiness. That's what everything they do is about, finding that, everything. And so you've been on a quest, and I love your shirt, be addicted to self-love. That is awesome. And you help people accomplish that in their own lives. So just tell us a little bit about your story. I briefly touched on it, but I'd like to hear it from your own lips.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here. So there is only one way that you can get freedom in this world, and it's through self-love and self-compassion. For 47 years, I lived a lie of trying to be someone who I wasn't. I thought that things outside of myself were going to bring me that love and peace and joy, and it's impossible. I thought making a lot of money would do it. I made a lot of money. It didn't do it. I thought certain wives would do it. Women didn't do it. I bought a 42-foot yacht and took it to the Florida Keys thinking that it would do it. And I just, through this exercise 2.5 years ago, went back to my childhood programming and figured out the stories and that I told myself around these stressful times that just dominated my whole life. I mean, when something bad happens to a 6-year-old boy, what does that little 6-year-old boy say about himself? Well, this is happening because I must be bad. So for 47 years, I thought I was bad. And when I went through that exercise, I came out of that Airbnb bedroom in Park City, Utah in February of 2021, just a completely different person. It was like a weight was lifted off of my chest. And that's what my clients say now when the third session, the hypnosis is over. I go, well, how are you feeling? Almost every one of them says, I feel so much lighter. This is great. So that's my story. My life changed so profoundly. I came back home. I looked around. I go, this is what's wrong with the world. 99.9% of every single problem we have in this world can be traced back to an individual's lack of self-love and self-compassion.
Yeah, and that's so fascinating and so true. And in reality, we're facing a crisis in our world today. And you're not the only one. People are looking for their own peace and happiness on the outside. They're looking externally to find that. And they're not able to find it because they're blocked by that lack of self-love. So tell us more about what you're seeing in society, because I know as I look around me, I'm noticing depression and anxiety is getting worse. It's getting worse, but we have a message of hope. We have a message of hope that tells us that what you really need to overcome anxiety, to overcome depression, to find self-love, all of that is already within you, but it's been blocked. It's been blocked by that trauma from childhood, those beliefs that were set in motion by what happened to you as a 6-year-old boy, what happened to me as a child. All of those things create these subconscious blocks, and then they drive us in our adult life. We're still reliving that story. Our mind is responding as if we're still in that situation. So talk more about that.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm seeing in society, you mentioned this, right? 33% of Americans are on an SSRI, which is an antidepressant and anti-anxiety. But if you look at hospitalizations for depression, anxiety, they're going up too. So what does that tell you? Are the drugs working? No, the drugs don't work. They work in some people, but it's always temporary. If you need to fix or want to fix mental pain or physical pain, there's only one way to do it, and it's to go to the source. So this is what you do every day. This is what I do. We take people through their subconscious brain to the source of that problem so that we can heal it. Otherwise, you spend a lifetime of doing things. Your subconscious brain controls 95% of your daily behavior. So when you come home and drink 3 glasses of wine, when you're fighting with your spouse, when your business sucks, when you're overweight and you can't stop eating, when you can't stop smoking marijuana every night, it's not your fault. Those are all driven by your subconscious pain that, again, for 47 years, I wasn't aware of. I thought everything was great. But if you look at why are our prisons full? Why is there a war in Ukraine going on? Why is the obesity rate so high, the divorce rate? It all comes back to the same thing. If you have a problem in life, it has to do with your thoughts, and your thoughts are only flawed. It's not your fault. Your brain's doing its job. They're only flawed by the childhood program that you received. So there's a better way. You don't have to suffer.
Oh, and you brought up an interesting point, the principle of psychological innocence. So I think when we take a look at our lives, and I know for me, I suffered at one time, like you, with severe anxiety and depression. And I had a lot of self-blame because I'd look around me and it seemed like other people were functioning so well. We don't know that they really are, because people hide what's really going on. And I just felt like, what is wrong with me? I've got all these issues. And in reality, I only had one issue, and that was my thinking. And when I realized that, then I began to blame myself for my thinking. Now, I was already lacking in self-love. I was already lacking in compassion. And now I began to beat myself up over my lack of proper thinking. And then when you realize, though, that your thinking is not your fault, it was programmed in by your upbringing, by the culture, by the religious influences in your life, by your peers in school, your teachers, all these influences, imprint upon our subconscious an identity, a set of beliefs, and we carry those beliefs unless they're challenged. And we often don't know that we have these beliefs, because I'll meet people and they'll say to me, actually, I have a pretty good self-esteem, but here's how you know that you lack self-love. Here's how you know that your beliefs are not what they need to be. They're not empowering. Look at the results in your life. If you're not getting the results, if you're continually getting into relationships that are toxic for you, if you're continuing to fall flat on your face when it comes to your career advancement, if you're continuing to have this internal struggle with bad habits and compulsions, then it's rooted in your thinking. It always is. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, if you're add on to this list, if you're judging people, if you're judging yourself, if you talk negatively to yourself, if you're always triggered, if you're driving to work and you're pissed off all the time, if you get upset about small things that others may not get, if you always have to be right, if you take things personally, all of those are signs of lack of self-love. It's not your fault. You lack self-love because of the way that you think. So any problem you have in your life is a thinking problem. Fix your thinking, it'll change your emotions, and it will change your behavior radically.
And what's so beautiful about that, Brad, is the fact that I think when we struggle with anxiety, depression, even compulsive behaviors, trying to lose weight and can't lose weight, and you begin to take a look at your life, you think, wow, I have so many problems, but it's just one
Just
thing.
one.
It's
Yeah.
just one thing.
Just one
And
thing.
then the problem is people say, okay, I figured it out. I'm going to change my thinking. And they try all sorts of stuff. They start watching YouTube videos, and that's great. They start reading books, and that's great. They're looking in the mirror, and they're looking in the mirror and saying to themselves, I'm awesome. And then their subconscious mind says, that's crap. You're not awesome. You're a loser. And then they look in the mirror and say, I'm looking better. I'm good looking. The subconscious mind says, no, you're not. Oh my God. Who are you trying to kid? Look at you, you fat slob. I mean, that's sad, but the voices and the beliefs that were programmed in from that school bully, from that critical parent, they're playing like a recording in the mind. And when we approach them from a conscious perspective, using conscious therapies, and then we're trying to make an impact, it's not that these things have no utility. They do create change, but it often takes a long time to counteract years of negative programming with conscious techniques. But when you work directly with the subconscious through hypnosis, through neural retraining, that is the game changer. And you talked earlier, Brad, about it was this one pivotal moment for you when your life changed in one weekend because you got to those subconscious roots. And that's the beauty of working with the subconscious mind, is it just because the problems seem complex, we think they have to have a complex solution, and they don't. The solution is really simple. Change and shifts in our lives can happen like that when you work with the subconscious mind. Am I right?
They happen every day. 3 hours. I'd gone to therapy for 3 decades. I've been to 50 different marriage counseling sessions in 3 hours. And the irony is now with my clients, it's between 3 to 5 hours of work with me where they see this profound change. So going back to something you said a couple of minutes ago, I'm fat, I drink too much, my marriage sucks, and my job sucks. And you're like you said, you got all these problems. Your eating problem isn't a problem that if with food. Your drinking problem has nothing to do with drinking. Your marriage has nothing to do with the actual relationship. The job has nothing to do with the job. These are all thinking problems. So what's the problem with drinking? It's how you think about yourself. What's the problem with your marriage? It's not what you think of your spouse. It's what you think of yourself. So yes, when you hear, go to these Tony Robbins events, and I love the guy, but when you go to these and he says, do affirmations and stand in front of the mirror, it doesn't work because your subconscious mind just overrules it. And this is the problem. Like, this is the biggest problem in our world right now. Forget the pandemic and the wars and everything. It's unresolved childhood trauma. And I don't like to use that word much anymore because so many people, including myself, are like, trauma, I didn't have trauma. So trauma can be as benign as your little sister coming home from the hospital and thinking your parents loved her more. So this is so huge. You and I have this thing that in 3 to 5 hours, every day we change we don't change them. We give them a plan and they change their lives. And this is why we're doing the show. And this is why I'm so passionate. And this is why I have stopped working in my main business. And I spend all of my time in this because this is incredible stuff that changes people's lives and families forever. And you can do it if you want to change.
Yeah, and I think that's what happens when people have tried all these things and they fail. They try this and it fails. They go to therapy for 5 years and it fails. They read books and it fails. And they think, I have tried everything. So they come to the conclusion, yeah, if it's not working, it has to be me. So therefore, I am hopelessly defective. And that is the saddest thing. And so our message to you is, you're actually not broken. You don't need to be fixed. There's nothing wrong with you. You're this beautiful person. You are just believing the thinking that was programmed into your brain. And when you learn to shift those beliefs to the truth, and that is important, it's not like you're suddenly going to start affirming yourself in ways that aren't true. At the core of who you are a beautiful, wonderful, lovable, and worthy person filled with potential. And if when I say those words, you say to yourself, oh, that just seems like something that can't possibly be true, that there is a sure sign that this is a problem that you have, that your mind is filled with these toxic and limiting beliefs. And now one problem, and I'm sure you have seen a lot of, Brad, in your work with clients, I said some clients come in and they do realize that their problem is childhood trauma. But what happens is they've now adopted a trauma mentality so that they've built their entire identity around that trauma. Are you seeing that?
I have been fortunate that I've only had one or two people that didn't have radical transformations. And one was a gentleman who thought really poorly about himself, but he thought it drove him to make a lot of money in his business. And he was afraid that if he started believing the truth that he was okay, his business would go to the wayside. Here's the truth, right? I'm a truth seeker and a truth teller. For 17 years in business, I was in business to make a lot of money to prove my worth. 2.5 years ago, when I made that massive shift, I was like, I don't need to make money anymore to prove my worth because I know I'm enough. All the words you just said, that's me. I'm beautiful. I'm whatever, just like everyone else is. So instead of focusing on money, 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 I am doing this business and everything else in my life now for impact. And when I started focusing on impact in my business, we had one of the best years ever last year in my real estate business. So, think about that. So that's not the truth either. So this poor person is still suffering because he thinks it's making him money. It's just hurting him, because when you are thinking in this way, you are in fight or flight. So you've got the lion chasing you. When there's a lion chasing you, how good can you be at creative thinking and thinking, where do I take my business next? You can't. Your brain literally doesn't operate at full capacity. So this is another one of the limitless, infinite benefits you get from doing this work. Is you get your creativity, and you should excel at work. Most people start making more money and go thrive at work.
Well, that's interesting, the example you used, because I think a lot of people don't correlate their struggles in the business world or in their career with these beliefs that they have developed. They're just not making that connection. And that's what we do, help people make that connection, because your subconscious mind, believe it or not, wants you experiencing peace and freedom. So we come to think of sometimes as the subconscious mind as an enemy, but everything that happens in the subconscious mind is about keeping us safe from that predatory lion that we often think is pursuing us when we're living in fight or flight all the time. But just like our body wants to heal, if we get a cold or flu virus, your mind wants to heal. It wants to let loose of these toxic and limiting beliefs just as much as your body wants to throw off a virus or a bacterial infection. And sometimes we need that help, because all of our society, when we look around at our culture, there are a lot of people are drowning. We're being sent through social media, through television, movies, messages. We're being sent a message. And that message is that you are never enough. You need, especially in the advertising world, you need this car to be enough. You're not enough because you're still single. You're not enough because you don't have kids. You're not enough because you're only a school teacher or a sanitation engineer or whatever your job. The message is you're never enough, because if we can convince you that you're not enough, you'll buy our product.
Buy our products. Yeah.
Yeah. And so this is the message we're saturated with all the time. And then in the therapy world, people go to get help for feeling like they're not enough. They're given another destructive marriage or another destructive lie. They're given the belief that, wow, you're really messed up. It's going to take years of therapy to fix that head of your, and that's where I spent. I don't know, how many years did you spend in therapy, Brad? Did you say
3 decades?
Okay, so it was quite a bit. I saw 5 different therapists, but it was off and on over the years from teenager to adult. And you know what? Honestly, out of those 5, one who actually worked with shifting your thinking, just one out of those 5 was actually a little helpful to me. The rest of it wasn't, I'm not downing all therapists. There's some great therapists out there, but if you're being given the message that it's going to take years to fix you, that's really sad, because, I was struggling for years. But the interesting thing, and I'm sure you've noticed this too when you were in therapy, is you go in and you talk about your problems And I felt like I was getting worse because now I'm reinforcing the same thought patterns and beliefs that are the source of my problem anyway. But I'm being given the impression that the source of my problem are what happened to me in my childhood, is the fact that maybe my relationship isn't what it's supposed to be, or I don't have the career I want, or I didn't go to college, or I don't have enough money. And this is what I'm being given the impression, and that's just being reinforced, and I'm missing the truth. The truth is it's already in there, right?
Well, I can remember with my first wife going to marriage counseling, and most of the sessions when I left, it was worse than when I went in. And I would literally say, what are we doing? We should just get a divorce. And I touched on it earlier. It is traditional therapy. It's the focus on the conscious mind, which only controls 5% of your behavior. And it's all symptom based. So, hey, hold her hand more, give her more affection, go on more date nights, repeat back what she says so you can make sure you get it. All of that stuff is nonsense when your subconscious brain is telling you you're no good and you're fighting for your worth. When you have two people that are fighting for their worth, it is almost impossible to have a deeply connected, committed relationship. And you might be sitting there and say, oh, I've been married for 20 years, 10 years. If you lack self-love, there's a chance you or your spouse has codependency. And the only reason that you're still in that marriage is because, one, you don't feel worthy enough to go find a better partner, or two, you're blaming it on the kids, like I'm going to stay around for the kids, which is never hardly ever good. Or third is the feeling that I'm not enough. Like I can't go do something better.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I just made a YouTube video on triggers, and so many people don't even realize why they're so angry all the time, especially in relationships, and I always use this example with my clients. If you have Betty, and Betty was told by her father, you're never going to amount to anything, and then she was told at school by her teachers, oh, you're not that bright. Okay. And then Betty grows up, she gets married, and her husband says to her, oh, that was dumb what you just said. Whoosh. All that childhood pain is triggered, and there's an explosion. Okay. Now there's Susie. Susie was affirmed by her parents. She grew up believing that she was worthy and smart. She did well in school, per se. And then her husband goes, that was stupid what you just said. And she goes, yeah, it was pretty funny, wasn't it? I mean, two totally different responses. And that's where it comes down to. It's not what's going on in your life. It's how you're filtering it through your subconscious mind that's determining your reaction. Heal the subconscious mind, and those reactions change, and everything in your life gets better. The way you respond in your career gets better. Your relationships get better. And just that feeling you get when you wake up and you face the day, and instead of facing a day from the standpoint of, I'm facing the day as an inadequate individual. You're facing the day as a person who's thinking about all the greatness that you have within you, and we all have it. And when we remove those subconscious blocks, that greatness is free to come out, because it's in there all along. We are all, I believe, and I know you do too, Brad, that we are all unique and wonderful individuals. We are worthy of love and respect, and we all have unique gifts and talents. And when you remove these blocks and we become, that self-love gets liberated, and we learn our true worth and value, that creativity flows, like you said. We begin to live out our lives in freedom and victory, and it's easy, becomes effortless to do so when you're coming from that place of self-love and empowerment.
It's a beautiful thing. You mentioned work earlier. As I said, lack of self-love is a problem in every area of your life. So if you're struggling at work, it's a mindset. It's not a mindset. It's a thinking issue, right? And a lot of people don't go for the promotions because they're like, I don't deserve that. I don't belong to that, but you do. Or I'm not smart enough. The IQ differential between like a Fortune 500 CEO and a mid-level manager at Walmart, they're way smaller than you would probably think. So you don't have an intelligence problem, because you can learn. You learned in school. You're learning right now. You can learn. You have a thinking problem. You have a fixed mindset that says, I can't do this. And that all comes from, just like the example you gave, your father saying you're never going to be anything. So you start to believe that. Is it the truth though? No. So you're living in an untruth. And that's when we suffer as human beings. If you live in the truth, you really can't suffer as a human being.
Yeah, and that's just, it's an interesting point. Every aspect of our lives is affected by this internal dialogue we have. And sometimes we don't even feel the internal dialogue. We just have a physiological response because we've thought for so long in a certain way. Like we go out, a lot of people have social anxiety. And the minute they step out into a crowd of people, they begin to feel like an imposter. I don't belong here. And they're not sure why they feel that way, but at the core, what they're believing is in their own inadequacy and unworthiness. And then I think that's one of the things that we do as coaches is help people to realize who they really are. And it's sometimes hard for them to believe. And you're telling them, like, you know, in that initial coaching session, the truth about themselves, and you could see them having trouble swallowing it. But when you remove the blocks, it suddenly makes sense. And it's like you've taken the blinders off and they begin to see the truth. And then through hypnosis and subconscious techniques and tools, that way of thinking that you need to have that self-love, it's easy to adopt that into your life. It was in there all along, but now it is set free. Because anxious people think differently than people who are confident, and happy people think differently than people who are depressed. And it's not that people that are anxious don't have the same potential or that something's wrong with them or that they're broken. That freedom is there for each and every one of us. And if anyone else could do something, you could do that too. The reason that guy's a CEO is because of the confidence and the beliefs he has. When you adopt that same confidence and that same beliefs, you can have that as well. And I bet you've seen that working with clients as I have. When the beliefs shift, wow, does life change.
Oh, I mean, every day, right? And you said something that reminded me of not knowing why I felt a certain way, right?
Mm-hmm.
My second wife would come to me and say, you know, tell me an issue that she had with me. And I would turn it on her, make it her problem, and then I would be distant. I wouldn't feel, I would have this like pressure on my chest for 3 days. I didn't feel like hugging her, being intimate with her, touching her. And I didn't like it. My conscious brain was like, what's going on? But I had no idea what was going on. Now I realized what was going on. She was reaffirming the message that my subconscious brain was telling me, which is, you're no good. See, I'm right. I'm right, Brad. You're no good. And so I had to fight, and then I flighted. Now you talk about radical changes. I've been in a relationship, long-term relationship now for, well, I don't know if it's long-term, 7 months. And when my now current partner comes to me and says, hey, this is what bothered you, I go, really? I let's talk about that. I didn't mean to do that. And we actually talk it out. And then we become closer, because an intimate relationship is where most of your unresolved childhood trauma is going to rear its ugly head. But it's also the greatest place on earth to mend it, because they can see you as a mirror. So not only do we heal through conflict, but we become closer. So I know this may sound strange. I almost welcome conflict now. I welcome any opportunity, either in my intimate relationship or anywhere else in the world, that anytime I feel a negative or mixed emotion inside, it is my body's alarm system saying, Brad, you've got something to work on. Similar when you have a fever, it's saying you're sick. So instead of when you feel that negative emotion, instead of reaching for a weed pen or a vape pen or a food or alcohol, know that will never, ever fix it. You just have to look internally. You have to sit with that feeling and figure out, where is it coming from? And then it will usually dissipate.
I am so glad you brought that up, because one of the things that I teach clients is to look, you know, what do we try to do? We try to run, like you said. I'm going to vape away my pain. I'm going to drink away my pain. I'm going to binge watch Netflix, and these thoughts will stop bothering me. But when we feel physical pain, we understand, okay, my ankle hurts. I need to stop walking on it, let it heal. But when we feel that emotional pain, we're like, oh, I got to get rid of this. We don't see it the same way. But the truth is, that our uncomfortable emotions, and they're not bad, even the ones we are culturally taught to think of as bad, these uncomfortable emotions are loving messengers. And I believe that they're there to teach us three things. One, something in your past needs to heal. Two, sometimes something in your present needs to change. And three, there's a toxic, untrue belief, and it's poisoning your system, poisoning your mind. It's not true. You need to be set free. And those are the primary reasons that the brain sends these uncomfortable emotions. It's giving you an opportunity to set yourself free, to make that change.
Boom. That is a mic drop moment. If I could drop my mic, I'd drop it. That's amazing stuff there, Tiffani. Guys, this is like real life stuff, right? This is like, what is more important in your life than having joy and freedom and peace? There's nothing. And if you're like, well, maybe if I had $10 million, right? Go do a Google search in the last 10 years of people who were worth $50 million or more and are now dead because they took their lives with overdosing. This is real life stuff. There's nothing better. At the end of the day, when you're lying on your deathbed, I believe that you're going to look at the intimate, the close relationships that you had and the impact that you've made on other people's lives. I think that's it. You're not going to remember the cars or the boats or the money or anything, but you're never going to get there if you keep doing the things you're doing, which Tiffani just talked about. If you have these toxic thoughts that you don't even know are happening. So all you have to do is look at, just like she said a couple of minutes ago, look at your results in life. Do you love what you've gotten? Do you wake up every day and get out of bed and be like, I cannot wait to start this day? Life is beautiful, because I do, and I'm no better than you. I just think differently. And you can think differently, not in 30 years of therapy, but in 3 to 5 hours of working with someone like Tiffani.
And you made an important point, because I think people listen to people like us and they go, well, you're a coach. But what people need to understand is both you and I, Brad, have come from a place of incredible despair. I mean, I had anxiety and depression so bad that I hardly left my house. I was agoraphobic. I wasn't driving,
Wow.
And you watched your marriages, your business disintegrate. We're just regular, everyday people like you. And yeah, we do this for a living, but before we did it for a living, we experienced our own personal transformation. And it's not that hard. I think people think, well, they did it, but can I do it? Answer that person out there who's just listening and thinking, can I do this, Brad?
I do it. I help people do it every single day. We have developed a proven process. So yes, it works. And we've been mentored by the same person who has literally personally done it thousands of times. She's taken people who were addicts, who went to therapy for decades, and in 1 2-hour session has radically changed their lives. So it can be done. There's nothing special about me. I was that guy that was always trying to be better. I was the guy that was doing the personal development, reading all the books, going to the therapist. I was like, nothing worked until that day that I was able to access my subconscious mind and figure out what were the stories that mind was telling me, and then just simply reverse them and then listen over and over again to a recording for 30, 60 days. And it literally reprogrammed my mind. It's called neuroplasticity. Nothing special about neuroplasticity with Brad. You have the same exact ability to do that.
Yeah. And for people that have trouble grasping that, if you think about all that you've learned, you learned how to read, you learned how to walk, you learned how to do math, you learned how to drive a car. You're still learning. You've learned stuff this past year that you didn't know 2 years ago. And that's all the result of neuroplasticity. When the brain, you are capable of learning, and therefore, you are capable of learning a new way of thinking. And when you work with the subconscious mind, it's quick, and that's how Brad and I met. I've been working as a trainer for Marissa Peer, and I met you during your training. And I could see right away that this was no ordinary guy. I mean, I could see it. He had an energy about him. I knew he was going to make something of himself. I'm really good with being able to kind of pinpoint that. And the reason I knew that was not because he was innately better than everyone else, but because he had shifted internally. He made those changes, and that energy was just evident. And it's not just for him. It's for anybody that wants it, anybody that's willing to change their thinking. And I think the message that we want to leave with people is that you're not broken, you don't need to be fixed, and you can transform your life. You absolutely can by transforming your thinking. And if you're looking right now at your life and things are not the way you want them to be, you're hearing that voice of the inner critic all the time, you can know one thing: it's your thinking. It's not your husband, it's not your career, it's not the car you drive, it's not the poverty situation you're in. All of those things are reality. But when we shift our thinking, we have the confidence to change all those things.
And it's not your fault either. It's just it's your brain doing its job. Your subconscious brain doesn't know the difference between yesterday and 30 years ago. So its only job is to keep you safe and alive. And it's keeping you safe and alive. It's keeping you in a familiar situation. We oftentimes go marry the person just that created the stress for us and trauma in our lives because it's familiar and you live through it. And that's the only point in the subconscious brain, keep you alive. So it's not your fault if you've been a therapist for 20 years, if you're way overweight, if you drink too much. None of this is your fault. You got to have compassion for yourself and believe in the truth that it's not your fault. But now you have awareness. We've just given you awareness, and you can go to our websites. We're not making this up. You can see the countless testimonials where we've helped change people's lives. And you can look at my life. You can, I mean, you may not know me, but everyone is like, good Lord, you've changed. Like, you're a completely different human being. So if I can do it, you can do it. You don't have to struggle. Life is about joy. It's about peace. It's about freedom. I wake up every day super energized because I absolutely love what I do. I'm in a great place. I don't have any bad days because I don't believe anything bad happens to us. I believe everything happens to us for a reason. So my car breaks down. Maybe it saved me from getting killed. Who knows? You can live your life the same exact way. It's just a choice, but it all begins with your thinking, and your thinking is not your fault.
That's a good point. No, our thinking is programmed in, but here's the good news. Like you said, Brad, what can be programmed in can be programmed out. And so happiness is available to you. And that is so important. Peace of mind is available to you. So, Brad, if people want to learn more, follow you on social media, get in touch with you, read more of your story, how can they get in contact with you?
bradchandler.com/contact. bradchandler.com/contact. So bradchandler.com/contact.
And I understand that you have quite the TikTok following. So tell them people how they could find you on TikTok if they want to watch some content.
Yeah, so the link is on that link I just talked about, but I'm Brad Chandler
awesome.
6 at TikTok.
All right, awesome. Well, it was absolutely my pleasure to speak with you today, Brad, and I will have to do this again sometime.
That was awesome. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to A Transformed Life, the podcast that celebrates personal and professional transformations. I hope that you found inspiration and practical tips to help you on your own transformation journey. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe to this podcast so that you don't miss out on future episodes. I have some incredible guests lined up, and I want to share their stories with you. I would also appreciate it if you could leave me a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback helps me to improve and reach more people who need to hear these stories of transformation. So thank you again for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next episode of A Transformed Life.